Well, hello again, everyone. I'm Roger Gunther. I'm the Executive Director for Port Houston. I know we've got a great audience out there today. We had a great discussion yesterday, and I'm thrilled to have another discussion today with two esteemed panelists who offer important perspectives regarding the topic of future changes for ocean shipping. And I enjoy listening to the earlier presentation, about moving the freight in a low carbon world, and I think build upon that a little bit here today. But just to start off, change is something that's constantly evolving in our shipping industry. The world sees a lot of change in the last several years, and most recently during the last 18 months, and we've had to adjust to a much different work environment than we were used to due to the pandemic. But, it's just going to be something again next year, and it's going to be different. In the following year, it's going to be different again. And someone told me the other day that 2020 was an anomaly, which no doubt that it was, but I contend, being in this business for a long time, that every year is an anomaly. And there's a rapid evolution in the supply chain that we have to face and look toward the future each and every year. Every year there's changes that impact us either globally or on that scale or on a regional basis. Could be storms, weather, trade policies, spikes in e-commerce, sourcing patterns, decarbonization regulations. We had the blockage of the Suez Canal, pandemics, all of the above. So change is something that we have to deal with. This list goes on, and we got to remain flexible and nimble. But most importantly, we got to remain proactive in thinking about things as we prepare for the future. So some of the current issues at the forefront include technology and information and how to harness this to create efficiencies in the supply chain. And also there's an increased awareness in the environment and the impact of the carbon footprint in moving cargo from its origin to destination. And everyone, of course, has to remain profitable in the business of global commerce. So, as the demands of the consumer continue to push forward for the goods to be delivered every day, they want them faster, they want them cheaper, and they want them cleaner. So there's a lot of effort along this. We'll talk about that today. At Port Houston, we really strive for, in our region, in our nation, our state, to drive the economy, and we do this by meeting the needs of the consumers through our Houston Ship Channel, which is the largest channel, the busiest waterway in our country. And the implications of being this busy port complex in the country are significant. So, and as the sixth largest container port in the nation, we understand that we have to have a need to develop a comprehensive plan to develop some of these and address some of the impacts that our activities on our communities into the future of shipping. So anyway, I'm sure the same applies with all of your organization, both ports and ocean carriers around the world, looking for ways and how we do business and how it impacts our stakeholders. So we have with us today two leaders in the maritime industry to talk about this thing. We have Jackson Scott here to discuss these future changes in the shipping industry. So we'll get started. First, I want to introduce Jax Vandermeeren, the CEO for the Port of Antwerp. The Port of Antwerp has been a longtime friend of Port Houston and a strategic partner with us. We share many similarities. Antwerp is an impressive port complex. I visited with Jax and his team a couple years ago in Antwerp and was able to view the port from a helicopter. So I'm envious there. They have a helicopter, but it's a big port, and it took a helicopter to see it all in a short period. We have a lot of similarities in that we are the two largest petrochemical clusters are located in the world in our ports. Their channel is similar to ours, 50 miles long, and Antwerp is the second largest port in Europe and the 14th largest port in the world. And it handles a tremendous amount of tonnage of cargo a year and more than 11 million TEUs. Jax is and has been the CEO of the Port of Antwerp since 2016. Throughout his career, he's led organizations dedicated to transformational change and has taken the Port of Antwerp to new heights in its commercial development, its growth and digitalization initiatives. It's now working recently on an announced merger with the Port of Zeebrugge, Belgium's second largest seaport. He's a chairman of The Shift, which is a Belgian meeting point for sustainability, whose focus is on areas in reducing carbon emissions, redefining the community value, and improving the management of resources and the creation of a more inclusive and diverse workplace. He also actively serves on several boards, including Nextport, an Antwerp-based port-wide data sharing platform. So welcome, Jax, and good to see you again. It's been a while, but thanks for joining us today. Also, I'd like to introduce Scott Kranske. He's the managing director of G2 Ocean. G2 Ocean is based in Norway and is our largest breakbulk carrier here at Port Houston City Docks. They are a dry cargo shipping joint venture between Gearbulk and Greek Star, and they operate about 130 ships, including the world's largest fleet of open hatch gantry crane and jib crane vessels. We see G2 Ocean's beautiful ships outside of our boardroom's window regularly. I don't see one today, but we regularly see them. Scott has been in the maritime industry for a long time, more than 20 years. He's G2 Ocean's newly appointed U.S. Atlantic Managing Director at G2 Ocean. Prior to that, he had strategic roles at DHL, Agility, Australasia, and Swire Shipping, where he was the president of the North American operation. So without further ado there, it's great to have you, Scott, as well. And thank you both for joining us today. And let's get started. And by the way, we are going to have some time at the end, hopefully, for some question and answers from our audience. So we'll try to get to as many of those as we can, but look forward to the conversation. So let's get started. We'll first want to talk about sustainability and clean air. We have a strategic clean air strategy plan here at Port Houston, and it's a priority and a goal of ours to tackle the emissions in and around Port Houston's public terminals for the near and long term. Reducing the carbon footprint jointly through an ESG plan, through collaboration with all the users on the Houston Ship Channel, the community interest, and many others, so that we can tackle these various initiatives regarding the environment, sustainability, and government. So to start off, to you both, just a quick question. What do you think is the most single impactful sustainability decision you have made at your company, and how will it impact the future of ocean shipping? Jax, I'll start with you.
Well, hello, Roger, and hello to all of you and Scott. And more than happy to be with you and to address a few words to the audience and to discuss this important items for the whole industry. Of course, we are a European port, so the European legislation, the European law will apply and will trigger in the coming years and decades our life. That's for sure. So the most important decision that we took in the Port of Antwerp last year was clearly the ambition to become a climate neutral port in 2050. And that's only 29 years from here. And that could give the impression that's quite a long time, but when you see the work that has to be done by many parties, companies, it's an enormous challenge. But I also see this as a catalysator to enforce the climate transition.
So just a little bit further on that, what can you tell us a little bit about what that means to be a climate neutral port? I mean, what are the ambitions are there, and maybe a little bit of how you plan to achieve that?
Well, knowing, like you mentioned in the introduction, Roger, we host the second largest chemical cluster of the world, Houston being number one and Antwerp number two in the world. So we are the energy hub of Europe, one of the main gates for energy in Europe, not only for the country of Belgium, but for a large part of Europe. When you have to bring this whole industry to a climate neutrality, you can imagine how tough this is, because today everything works on fossil fuels, and we have to move the whole industry, but also the whole energy system to a renewable energies and a renewable eco and energy system. And ports will be key in this transition, because we have them all in our area, which is of course has as a consequence that lots of CO2 emissions is to be found in the Port of Antwerp. So we will have to find solutions, and luckily for us, we have key players, we have front runners in the port. And I believe that the role of the Port Authority is to bring all these brains, all these companies, all those frontrunners together and create the coalition of the willing, because nobody will find the solution by himself. This is a huge challenge. So we will have to reinvent ourselves. We will have to focus on innovation. We will have to invest, and it will be trial and error. And most probably we will fail in bringing some innovation, some technologies we believe in a few months or in a few years, and it will appear that it's not the good one, that we cannot scale it up, and so on. So it's quite a journey, and the clock is ticking, because Europe has put this ambition by bringing this European Green Deal to the table, what was voted in the European Parliament a few months ago. So the ambition for the whole continent is to become climate neutral. And of course, it will have consequences for the industry, of course, for the energy business, but also for the shipping industry. And we have them all in the Port of Antwerp. So we will have to bring solution, bring or create coalition of the willing in those three pillars, in the shipping, in the industry, and in the energy. And we have concrete examples for the time being on CCS, for instance, on green hydrogen, on multi-fuel ports, so in alternative fuels. So it's for a port, it's not only or longer focusing on maritime business and on logistics. It's much more than that. It's being a key player in a transition for a whole country, for a whole industry, and we will have to find new solutions and try new technologies. So it's fascinating times, and you were mentioning my previous career in the energy business for more than 25 years, and it's welcome that I have a few expertise in the energy that will help to play that role as a port authority, because a port is a place where it will happen. We will be the glue that will create partnerships. We will be the sparkle that ignites the change. So if you if you are optimistic, if you are a believer that yes, we can do this, then you are more than welcome in Antwerp.
Well, that's great, and you know, I agree. We talked about the similarities in our ports, and you know, all of the stakeholders in the ports, and everyone has to be on board. I know it's a huge challenge and something that we're willing to tackle here ourselves. You talk about being the glue. I thought that's interesting. You know, I don't know your authoritative construct of the port or whatever. You know, we don't own all the facilities in the port. You know, we have responsibilities for the channel and facilities, but you know, the port's got to be the leader of that and bring everybody together who believe that this can happen. So thank you for those comments. Scott, just turn to you from the carrier side. What about you? What do you think is the single most impactful sustainability that your organization has made?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. And I want to take the opportunity to say good morning and good afternoon to everyone, of course. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the Baker Institute and the Port of Houston and Antwerp as well for the opportunity to present today. So it's really good to be part of the panel. As you mentioned in my intro, I've just recently joined G2 Ocean here in Atlanta, so very excited about that. But certainly been impressed at the high level of enthusiasm and commitment by all of the team members towards the sustainability efforts. And that's focused on vessel emissions, it's focused on waste management, ocean conservation, crew well-being, but also being recognized as a gender-balanced workplace and a management team. G2 Ocean is passionate about their vision of pioneering sustainable shipping solutions, and that is very clear. So there's a lot of work that's been done prior to my arrival, which was just recently, but certainly some of those programs may seem relatively small in nature, as we talk about today, and others are more fundamental. But either way, we all have a duty to protect the planet, and so I'm particularly excited to be making a contribution to that effort and working with the team on various programs as we look at sustainable solutions going forward.
Well, that's great, and we know that some of those measures that G2 Ocean is taking, as far as environmental concerns, is you're recently awarded the gold medal by EcoVadis for its performance in your corporate social responsibility. So tell me a little bit about that and how international shipping is positioned to create this change in our world right now.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. And certainly the EcoVadis award was something we're very proud of. We previously had won the award on a silver medal basis, and then more recently won that on a gold status basis. And just as context, if you like, EcoVadis measures around 65,000 organizations globally, and in that, G2 Ocean was in the top 5 of all companies in all 4 categories for environment, labor and human rights, ethics, and sustainable procurement. And in addition to that, we're very proud of the fact that we scored in the top 2% of companies in relation to the transportation industry. So we saw that as a good bellwether for the efforts that have been put in so far, and there's still continued efforts around that around those 4 pillars. In terms of where we view some of that background, if you like, if you look at the IMO and their records, they estimate there's just over 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. And in 2018, at least, the industry was responsible for about 3% of global man-made emissions. G2 Ocean, as a company, emitted around 2 million metric tons of CO2 annually. And whilst we've made some improvements in that area, roughly 3% through engine hull monitoring efforts, propeller polishing, and certain additives in the fuels and fuel efficiency, we're confident that is a small step, but clearly with future new build vessel design, we shaped around these goals and create even more opportunity to improve those results even further. And so that's something that we're particularly excited about. As Jacques already mentioned, as we get towards 2050, there is clear IMO regulations in regards to emission standards, and happy to talk further on that today as well. But the EcoVadis was something that was particularly a good testament to the efforts put in, and certainly areas that we want to continue to strive in.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And yeah, those IMO put those measures in place, I think, in 2018. They're continually increasing or whatever since then. And there was some discussion in the earlier panel. There's several ocean carriers that have been testing new technology for fuels. I know CMA CGM bunkered its first ever LNG powered vessel, a container vessel. There's some more on order for LNG. Hogue accelerated its decarbonization efforts by its first carbon neutral voyage from Europe to South Africa with biofuels, which was discussed earlier as well. So I understand that, Scott, just this month, there was a record number of new builds for vessels that operate using transition fuels like LNG and maybe eventually hydrogen powered vessels, which may be the vessels of tomorrow. How do you view from a carrier standpoint this development, and maybe a little bit about what G2 Ocean is planning to do with their fleet?
Yeah, for sure, Roger, and that's a really interesting question in itself. And again, as you mentioned in the introduction, G2 Ocean's operating about 130 vessels at the moment globally, mostly in the open hatch division, with a smaller portion in our bulk division. And that consists almost entirely of committed tonnage from our two partners and owners, Gearbulk and Grieg Maritime. So to comply with the initial IMO regulations of 2020, all of G2 Ocean's long-term tonnage switched over to very low sulfur fuel, which we believe to be the right path in alignment with our long-term strategic goals around the environment. And so we successfully transitioned to there. We did not go down the scrubber path. We went for the low sulfur fuel instead. And the bunker department worked and very closely and monitored the availability of that fuel. And pleased to report that we've not had any supply issues with being able to realize that very low sulfur fuel. But now, of course, further steps in the industry are needed as we get towards 2050. And Jacques quite rightly mentioned it's only 29 years away. That's right. So that needs some foresight and some planning. And clearly, there's a number of fuel types available for that. Alternate fuel types include LNG, hydrogen, ammonia, and even battery cells. And I think all of those will shape new build design and features into the future. And I think an interesting point on ammonia, of course, that I was reading on the other day is that it has 9 times the energy density of lithium battery cells and 3 times that of compressed hydrogen. So ammonia seems to be the particularly for long haul trades, if you like, the most favored path, if you like, looking at that 2050 zero emission. And just finally, as an interesting topic on that, Grieg Edge, who is a Grieg Maritime company, they recently announced plans to build the world's first green ammonia fueled tanker, which will be greenhouse gas emission free. And that's a development that's generated a considerable amount of media attention as being quite innovative. And I'd certainly encourage people to look at those articles as well. It's really quite at the front edge of what's available out there. And I think there's a number, as you say, there's a number of alternate fuels available, and it's a matter of design, factoring that into the design for various new builds as that comes available.
Yeah, and I know that's a big part of it is, having those designs for the maximum efficiency of the vessels themselves. And Jack's just along those lines, the vessels have to be fuel historically, with Antwerp being a big energy port, and as well as Houston Ship Channel. We're among the largest bunkering ports in the country historically, right? And we have to be the leaders in that, I think, going forward. And while we explore at the stakeholders' needs and demands, whether it's LNG, hydrogen, or other bunkering opportunities at our facilities, we're going to have to be the supplying ports for that moving forward. So can you share with us a little bit, Jax, about what Antwerp is doing and how they're engaged to integrate for the future in the bunker market of alternative fuels?
Yeah, we are indeed, like Houston, a big bunkering port, the fifth
Absolutely.
in the world. So we are very concerned by this item. And again, there is no silver bullet for the time being. It's the end discussion, and it's also a chicken and the egg discussion. So everyone is looking at everyone. So we are looking at the carrier, of course, hoping to discover what they will decide. And unfortunately, maybe there is no decision with some of them. Others took a transitional decision, like CMA, for instance, investing and believing in LNG in a transitional phase. So we, as a port, we will have to be ready to accommodate every solution for probably the next 2 or 3 decades, hoping that afterwards there will be a kind of silver bullet application. And I believe indeed in the ammonia approach, and more than ever, it's important for ports to sit around the same table as carriers, and oil companies, for instance, to listen who is doing what, and to try to understand what will happen and who will decide and who will take which option for the coming 10 years, because we have to be ready. So the energy transition of the shipping industry will happen on land. Look at the OPS. If you want to have those cold ironing, and some carriers are investing in cold ironing, well, we have to be ready to have the plug-in installation. But it's really easier said than done. Because you have to look at the grid, you have to look at the energy suppliers, you have to install technology container handling terminals, and they are not happy to have those things in front or on the quay between the cranes and the ships and things like that. So it's a multi-fuel approach that we have to develop. So this will be expensive again, and it will take time. And so we have to start now, and that's what in the Port of Antwerp we are currently doing. We are developing the LNG bunkering facilities. We are investing. We are looking with Zeebrugge, our new company, and which the unification process is ongoing, and next year we hope to be the unified Port of Antwerp route, where there is a terminal operated by Fluxys, but we are contemplating or considering to build another liquefaction terminal to bring in those hydrogen carriers like ammonia or synthetic methane or methanol, but we will have to build those things. That's the chicken and the egg discussion, hoping that someone will come and use it. So finding off-takers is key, but also having the facilities to import the new energy carriers in our port is key, and connecting the two port platforms by building pipelines. Have an affiliate owning already more than 1,000 kilometers of pipelines within the port area of Antwerp, but also towards the port of Ghent, and we will have to connect now the port of Zeebrugge. So it's massive. It's investing in lots of technologies in a big area, and discussing this with the other concerned stakeholders. And so it's more than ever, lots of work, lots of energy, lots of money, and not having the crystal ball, not knowing what will be the final solution. But it's fascinating. That's
it is fascinating, and yeah, how long we've been talking about shore power, and it's very complicated. You have to have the commitment, with the carriers. I think that collaboration needs to happen. What kind of emissions is the power, for the shore power, emitting, and so there's a lot of things to consider there. But one quick question before we move on is, Jax, I understand you commissioned the first hydrogen-powered tugboat in Antwerp. Is that in operation, and how's that working?
Well, that's correct, and that's where we talk, but we like to walk the talk. Also, it's easy to discuss what others have to do. It's more complicated when you put your money where your mouth is, and so if you're a believer in the hydrogen possibilities, well, why not try this in your own fleet? We have a small fleet of tugboats and dredgers in the port of Antwerp, and we are doing lots of things. We are retrofitting some of them with methanol, but we also commissioned recently the first real hydrogen tugboat, and it's for the time being somewhere on a Spanish shipyard. Is in construction, and we hope to have the first one in end of 2022. And is of course it will be the first one, and hopefully it will be a success, and it will be exported to other ports and other tug carriers. But that's where it becomes really interesting. It's to try and invest yourself. Then you can discuss this with CMB, who is the carrier who is doing this, and ABC, who is building the engine for the hydrogen. And then you're right in the middle of what's happening on a small base, what's happening in the world with the big carriers like Go2Ocean. So we are a very small fleet owner, but we want to play the game like yourself, Scott.
Yeah. Well, great. And Scott, real quick, I'm going to throw this one at you. I think it's relevant what we're talking about real quickly. A question: can ships be retrofitted for hydrogen or ammonia fuel, or will new builds replace existing ships that otherwise have longer life? Any thoughts on that, just quickly?
Yeah, very briefly. There are some avenues for retrofit and even dual fuel that are being discussed and developed at the moment across the industry, and some of that's necessary to bridge the gap, as Jacques mentioned, to there'll be some transition fuels as we get to some longer range opportunities, and then of course from a new build perspective, as you say, then if you're investing the money in a new build, then best to go straight to the optimal fuel source that you're looking for going forward. And just to sort of touch on Jacques' earlier comments, I think he's exactly right. Similar to the IMO 2020 challenge that the industry faced, it was through the collaboration efforts, and it was really through everyone working together as stakeholders that we managed to overcome what seemed a fairly daunting challenge at the time, is to provide that fuel source and make that transition. And so it's a testament to the industry as a whole to be able to work together. And I remember there were scares at the time that maybe some fuel sources wouldn't be available in certain parts of the world and so forth, and that hasn't come to be. So I'm very confident that we as an industry can work together with stakeholders to meet the forward challenges and demands that are placed upon us.
Well, that's good, and a good question, and thank you for that as well. Move on to a subject we talked a little bit about yesterday is infrastructure in the supply chain, how it's evolving, and it's requiring major investments not only in technology but also the planning and infrastructure to remain, to keep us efficient and sustainable. One thing that we're doing, and I'm not going to belabor the time, we're expanding our channel, right, with the deepening and widening project here in Houston to, efficiencies in itself not only make channels safer but also more efficient, which ultimately, along with technologies, when ships are more efficient, then you put less emissions in the air, right? And whether it's a channel or a terminal operation or those things, those are investments in technology and infrastructure, are certainly not only efficient from a profitability standpoint, but also to move goods in a less emitting way. So Scott, just a little bit on the ocean side, how does G2 Ocean foster innovation through the use of technology?
Yeah, and thanks for that, Roger. I certainly want to take the moment, if I can, just to congratulate you and your team on the Project 11 efforts and initiative. I know there was a lot of pre-work done on that to make the ship widening channel become a reality, and a lot of hard work and dedication. And as a user and a stakeholder of the port, we're particularly excited about that as well. So look forward to seeing that project come to fruition, and very excited by that initiative. So that's congratulations to you and the team on that, and it's really great. So in terms of how we foster innovation, to your point, I mean, we're a customer-centric organization. So all G2 employees, we believe, are responsible for innovation. And we, in addition to that, have a dedicated innovation team who provide the engine for helping propel that further, if you like. And they're looking at different initiatives all the time and projects, with consulting with clients and industry and other stakeholders to try and be at that front edge of what's going to affect the market and how we can connect global and local communities to continually improve our service offering and operational efficiencies. A couple, just to highlight to your point, we launched MyG2 as an online platform late last year, and that's provided good functionality for vessel search, track and trace scheduling, but also there's further rollouts planned for that this year, which will help further enhance that client experience even more through technology. Electronic bills of lading, that was something that certainly we embraced very aggressively during the COVID situation, where being able to be socially distant but also interact with clients and provide a traditional bill of lading, if you like, is something that we had to manage as a team. And through some blockchain technology, we're making some advances in that area as well, which is quite impressive in itself. And then finally, the robotic hold cleaning in the vessels, and the ability to use robotics to clean certain cargo holds in between voyages, and that's also providing some innovation and efficiency. And you look at the traditional way of cleaning that, and again, in a post or mid-pandemic, post-pandemic environment, being socially distant and actually being able to provide that efficiency is something that we're working towards as well.
Yeah, so we're seeing it, rapidly. There's so much data, there's so much information, there's so much technology available that we're becoming more and more dependent on. And Jax, we've seen how Antwerp has invested in digitalization of information, and this Nexport initiative that you have is a good example of the strides that you're making. So, what is that purpose of that Nexport collaboration there, and how will this kind of evolve or replace the way you do business today, as far as from a digital and technology standpoint?
Well, in my opinion, the port of the future will be clean and digital. So it's easier said than done. And so connecting ports in a digital way will be key. And I'm happy to do this with yourself, Roger. We are sister ports, and we invest a lot and we discuss a lot this digital way forward. And we have an affiliate since a few years called Nexport. And the idea is to build a digital, a robust, safe digital platform network where we can bring all the data, or the most data as possible, of the global supply chain on that platform, so that it can be shared by all the stakeholders. It will make the whole global supply chain, of course, safer, more efficient, more transparent, and cheaper. So that's the whole idea, and will have a positive impact on climate also. So that's the idea. But like always, it's easier said than done, because data is something, it's called by some the new oil, so it has a certain value. So sharing data, well, how to do this is the key question. And there again, I think port authorities can play a crucial role, being neutral, and we are not doing this for cash reasons, as I may say so. It's something that we bring to the port community, and that we will develop together with the port community and also with customs. That makes Nexport quite unique. We involve the Belgian customs in the board. So the managing director of the Belgian customs is sitting on the board of Nexport, like myself, and the key representatives of the port, private port companies. So then you can create trust, and you can develop the platform, and you can develop some applications, like on bulk chain. For steel, we developed an application that is currently running and developing, so we can make the whole administrative process much easier for everyone, more transparent, more efficient. And we can add lots of applications for the chemical business. Cleaning gas tanks, for instance, e-click is another application that we developed. And recently we created a joint venture with Vopak to bring that platform to other ports in the world. And it's Singapore on the one side, and the United States on the other side. So the idea is now to bring that platform with Vopak to the Port of Houston, but also other ports in the United States, so that their customers, so the chemical, petrochemical industry, can use the platform of Nexport. And we were very happy to discover that Vopak, which is a big player in the world, and have a screening of all the digital platforms in the world, well, they preferred to do this with us, with a small Nexport platform, because it works, it's performant, and it's for them probably the easiest way to bring value to their clients and their customers. So it will start in a few months. We will build some opcos in the United States with FOPAC to bring Nexport International to yourself, and hopefully it will become a success.
Yeah, and I think that's important. You see some of the recent things, and again, there's so much information out there. Harnessing that. Even I've heard the leader of the ports on the West Coast, Southern California, talk about information, digitization. Some of the congestion issues were about equipment availability and those type of things. But the transparency and the communication through digital technology is there, but like the equipment's there, it's available. They just don't know where it is, and different people aren't talking to one another. So it's creating inefficiencies, which ultimately don't help the carbon footprint and the emissions and the idling and all the things that are being done. So we've got 4 minutes. I'm just going to quickly ask you, because I think a lot of people want to know. It's a question that I get to ask all the time. Quickly, the pandemic. How did we survive? Where are we at? And what do we learn from it? And in a matter of a couple minutes, Scott, what's G2 Ocean's experience with that?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. And it's certainly being discussed many times already. It's been a trying period for everybody, but we've come together as a team and continued to provide the level of service needed to move the goods around, both from the dedicated team ashore, but also importantly the seafarers as well. And so that's that's certainly a very important area for us, and providing that continuity of service to clients and to markets. Operating 130 vessels, you need some good coordination, but also the ability to stay connected to clients. And so working remotely, as many others have, has been critical to that, and also just being in touch with clients' needs and being flexible and responsive to it. On the vessel side of the business, earlier this year, we actually signed the Neptune Declaration on Seafarers' Wellbeing, and it was around we were one of 300 companies to sign on to that declaration. And that really looked out for the well-being of about 400,000 seafarers who've been, had conditions placed upon them that have been quite difficult through various governments and the ability to freely travel. So we've worked closely with that as a group, but also independent to that, and really pleased to see some of the positive efforts coming through there now, with vaccines actually happening to crew during port stays, and that's needed a careful amount of planning and logistics to make that happen. But really excited at the fact that we're able to provide vaccines to crew members during port calls in certain ports around the world now. And so there's plenty still to be done, but the importance really is to that resilience and that customer continuity.
Yeah, and hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's people tend to forget, I think, that ships don't run by themselves. Ports and cargo and trucks doesn't move by themselves, and through this pandemic, it's highlighted the need for essential workers at our port who experience similar situations that we had here in the States and in Houston during the pandemic. And I think we learned a lot. Maybe you share a little bit about where you're at and what you learned. Jax, are you there?
Well, yeah. Well, it was indeed a very, very tough and difficult times, but we managed to keep the port 100% of the time in operation, and that's the success of the men and the women who operates the port, and it starts with the pilots, and it ends with the truckers and also the customs and everything and everyone in between. So it's once again it's an effort that was made by lots of people who were very committed, very engaged. And I remember the first lockdown, half March, so more than 1 year ago, when there were no mouth masks and no hand gel, and the goods were coming in, and the virus was around, and so we had to sit with the unions and discuss with them how do we tackle this. And that's the proud of dockers and port people. They were there in the crisis, and they did their job day and night, and without knowing that there was a risk. But they preferred to take the risk than to stay safe at home. And that's what we are very proud of in this industry, that in difficult times we are still there for the community, because we were vital for the food industry, for the bringing vegetables and so on to the final customers. And so if something happens in the port, then it will have huge consequences for hundreds and millions of citizens who were in need. So that's well, it was quite easy to bring that message to the whole port community, and they stood as a man immediately. And there was no incident, no fight with the unions, not at all. And we are very proud and happy that we managed the whole situation. And now there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and we will be very grateful towards the whole community who did a great effort.
Yes, very good comments, and very much the same here. You know, in times of difficult situation, a lot of people stood up. A lot of us were able to work remotely. Certainly there was a big majority of those that weren't, and we kept the supply chain going, and very proud of those men and women who did that. You know, it evolved from basic needs, goods that were just basic needs of people, to, hey, we're sitting at home and you know, we need some bicycles and stuff. And then it evolved into this tremendous e-commerce boom now, where, you know, apparently people had disposable income because they didn't take trips or anything like that, and buying more and more on Amazon than they ever have before. So it's been a big roller coaster, I guess, with what began as looking bleak at the beginning of last year, and now it's you know, the freight is moving at a rate, especially on the import side, as much as that we've ever seen. So, well, look, you know, unfortunately, we're out of time. Been great discussion. We could talk all day about the future of global freight, and I really appreciate the insight from you, Scott, one of our carriers, big carriers here in Houston. Thank you for what you do here, and Jax, your comments, and look forward to continue to collaborate with your port and the fine work that you're doing, you know, in the sustainability and improvements and efficiencies. So I think we have a lot to share. And to our audience, thanks for your questions. Couldn't get them to all of them, but really good discussion, and I look forward to seeing you both soon.